Level 1. The applicant. You're 22. You graduated from Georgetown with a degree in international relations. You speak passable Arabic. You've never fired a weapon. You applied to the CIA on a Tuesday afternoon, the same way someone might apply to an insurance company. Online. A long form. A resume you spent 3 hours polishing. 3 months pass. Nothing. Then a letter arrives. No letterhead. A P.O. box in Northern Virginia. It doesn't say CIA. It says Office of Personnel. You're invited for an assessment. You drive to a nondescript office building in Tyson's Corner, Virginia. No signs. No logos. A receptionist who doesn't smile. You sit in a waiting room with 11 other people. Nobody speaks. You all stare at the same beige wall. The assessment takes 2 days. Polygraph, psychological evaluation, written tests, and a panel interview where 3 people ask you questions you aren't allowed to answer fully, even to yourself, afterwards. They ask about your finances, your relationships, whether you've ever used drugs, whether any member of your family has ties to a foreign government. One question stays with you. Have you ever done anything you would be ashamed to see reported publicly? You think for 2 seconds longer than you intend to. That pause goes somewhere. You don't know where. 6 months later, a second letter. You've been conditionally accepted into the Directorate of Operations. You'll begin the career trainee program, unofficially called The Farm, at Camp Peary, Virginia. You tell your parents you got a government job in analysis in Washington. They're proud of you. When you feel the first weight of it settle on your shoulders. The specific gravity of a life that must now be lived in 2 registers simultaneously, the one people see and the one that's real. You drive south on I-64. The trees close in on both sides. You can't see what's ahead. Level 2. The Farm. You're 23. Camp Peary doesn't look like what you imagined. It looks like a state park. Pine trees. A lake. Gravel roads. If you didn't know, you'd think it was a military retreat. You know, your class has 28 people, former military, former academics, a woman who speaks 4 languages and won't say which ones, a man who was a police detective in Baltimore for 6 years. You don't know their real names for the first 3 weeks. You use work names. Yours is Caldwell. The coursework is relentless. Our surveillance detection, learning to spot a tail before they know they've been made. Dead drops. How to pass documents in a crowd. How to build a cover story that holds under sustained interrogation. How to make a lie feel less like a lie and more like an alternate truth you've simply chosen to inhabit. The instructors don't raise their voices. That's what unsettles you. They speak the way surgeons speak. Precise, clinical, unbothered by the weight of what they're describing. One afternoon, you practice an assessment exercise. You're given a cover identity, a mid-level trade consultant named Marcus Webb, and sent into a nearby town to make contact with a target, a retired school teacher who doesn't know he's part of a training exercise. You sit at his table at a diner for 40 minutes. You buy him coffee. You get him talking about his son, who works in defense contracting. You extract 3 pieces of personal information he would never have volunteered to a stranger. You drive back to Camp Peary. You write the report. You feel something that isn't quite guilt and isn't quite pride. You file it away. You learn to do that with feelings here. Not suppress them exactly, but compartmentalize them the way you'd store sensitive documents. Accessible. Controlled. Not left lying open. One trainee washes out in week 7. You're not told why. His bunk is cleared by morning. You learn not to ask. By the final month, something has shifted in how you see the world. You notice exits in rooms before you notice the people in them. You clock eye contact and duration. You catch yourself reading the hands of strangers before their faces. You pass. All 19 of you who remain pass. You're given your first official posting. A man, Jordan. Level 3, the case officer. You're 26. You work out of the US Embassy in Amman under diplomatic cover as a second secretary for economic affairs. Your colleagues in the political section believe you. Your Jordanian counterparts mostly believe you. The ones who don't, the senior intelligence officers of the General Intelligence Directorate, have the professional courtesy to pretend. Your job is to recruit and handle human intelligence sources. Human in the language of the building. In practice, this means find people with access to information the United States government wants. Build a relationship with them. Convince them to betray their country, their organization, or their employer. Ideally, without them fully realizing that's what they're doing until it's too late to walk it back. You have 2 active sources by your second year. One is a low-level official in the Jordanian Finance Ministry who provides economic forecasting data. His motivation is money. The other is a Lebanese businessman who travels regularly to Damascus and has a loose network of contacts inside the Assad government's outer circle. His motivation is harder to name, a mix of ideology, grievance, and the seductive feeling of mattering to someone powerful. You meet him every 3 weeks at a rotating series of locations: a restaurant near the Third Circle, a hotel lobby in Abdoun, a parking garage off Garden Street. You never use the same location twice in the same month. He tells you things. Or you write them up in cables that travel encrypted to Langley. You never know what happens to the information once it leaves you. You send it up and it disappears, the way water disappears into the ground after rain. One evening, a source you've been cultivating for 4 months, a Syrian engineer with tangential connections to a procurement network, goes quiet. No contact for 2 weeks. Then a message through a cutout. He wants to stop. No explanation. You write the termination report. You flag the circumstances as ambiguous. Possible surveillance, possible fear, possible shift in personal circumstances. Your station chief reviews it. He says nothing. He signs off. You wonder for months what happened to the engineer, whether he's alive, whether you missed something in the pattern of his behavior that you should have caught. You don't get an answer. You're beginning to understand that the job is made almost entirely of unanswered questions. Before we go further, if you've made it this far, comment what you want next. Hit that like button right now and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. We upload every single day. Level 4, the targeting officer. You're 31. You're back in Virginia. Headquarters. The original building at Langley. The one with the marble floor in the lobby. The CIA seal. The Book of Honor on the north wall where a star is carved for every officer killed in the line of duty. No names for the ones still classified. Just stars. You count them sometimes when you walk past. You've moved into targeting. Your job now is not to handle sources, it's to identify them. To study a foreign intelligence target, a network, an organization, as a foreign government ministry, and map the human terrain inside it. Who has access? Who has grievances? Who is underpaid, overlooked, passed over for promotion? Who has a sick child and debt they can't mention to their superiors? Who travels internationally? Who might be reachable? You spend your days in a windowless office analyzing signals intelligence, travel records, financial data, and reports from case officers in the field. You build link charts, visual maps of relationships, associations, vulnerabilities. You are, in the clinical language of the institution, identifying human beings as potential assets. You don't think about it in those terms. You think about it in terms of access, in terms of what information exists and how to get to it. Or one targeting package you develop over 8 months results in a recruitment, a mid-level official inside a foreign ministry in Southeast Asia. The case officer in the field later tells you the recruitment was clean, fast, almost too easy. You feel satisfaction, then you feel nothing. The cycle continues. The analytic culture at headquarters is different from the field. In the field, the friction is external. The physical risk, the isolation, the need to perform a false identity under pressure. At headquarters, the friction is internal. You are surrounded by extraordinarily intelligent people who disagree with each other constantly and are not allowed to say so directly. Meetings involve layers of subtext. Disagreements are expressed through the passive structure of written cables and comments inserted into reports. Or a phrase like, "This assessment may benefit from further sourcing," means, "I think this is wrong, and the officer who wrote it is overconfident." You learn the language quickly. You start writing in it. Level 5. The Chief of Station. You're 38. You're posted to Nairobi, Kenya. Chief of Station, the senior CIA officer in country. Everything in the building with your station's operational equities runs through you. Sources, relationships with foreign liaison services, ongoing collection operations, counterterrorism coordination with the Kenyan National Intelligence Service. You have a staff of 11. Several are under non-official cover, NOCs, operating completely outside embassy affiliation with no diplomatic protection if something goes wrong. If they're caught, the US government will express no knowledge of their activities. You brief the ambassador on intelligence matters once a week. She's sharp. Former Deputy National Security Advisor. She knows more about how the building works than she's ever let on. You respect each other with the careful distance of two professionals whose mandates occasionally conflict. East Africa in this period is complicated. Al-Shabaab maintains operational reach out of southern Somalia. There are active cells in Mombasa and Malindi. The threat reporting is dense, sometimes contradictory, always urgent. One morning, a source reporting through a third country cutout provides intelligence suggesting an attack is being planned against a commercial target in Nairobi within 30 days. The reporting is single source, uncorroborated. The source has been reliable for 2 years, but has also shown signs of embellishment in previous reporting. A pattern of slight exaggeration that kept his value high and his payments coming. You have to make a call. You write the threat assessment. You judge the reporting as plausible but unconfirmed. You recommend increased surveillance coverage and coordination with Kenyan services, but you do not recommend a public warning that would burn the source and potentially expose the method. 30 days pass. Nothing happens. You will never know if nothing happened because the plot was disrupted, because the reporting was inflated, or because the threat was real and the timeline simply shifted. You write the follow-up cable. You eat dinner alone in your residence that night. You pour a glass of scotch you keep for moments that require a glass of scotch, and you sit with the specific discomfort of a decision made under uncertainty, the outcome of which you will never fully understand. This is the center of the job, you've come to realize. Not the recruitment, not the intelligence, the tolerance for irreducible ambiguity. You develop a high tolerance. Level 6, the Senior Intelligence Officer. You're 44. You're back at Langley. Senior Intelligence Officer in the Counterterrorism Center, one of the most operationally active components in the building since September 11th, 2001, rewrote the architecture of American intelligence. You manage a division. 40 analysts and case officers. You review operational proposals. You sit on targeting boards. You write assessments that go to the National Security Council. The pressure at this level is different. It's not the pressure of personal physical danger, it's the pressure of consequence. Your words shape policy. A phrase in a presidential daily brief, the intelligence summary delivered to the Oval Office each morning, can alter the direction of a foreign policy decision, can move troops, can trigger a drone strike. You learn to write with enormous care, to caveat appropriately without hedging so severely that the assessment loses its usefulness, to state confidence levels honestly even when the consumer, the policymaker, wants certainty you cannot provide. One evening, a proposal comes through your division for an operation targeting a facilitator in a financing network. The intelligence is solid. The target is real. The operation, if approved, will likely result in the target's capture or death. You review it. You approve it. You go home. You make dinner. You watch part of a film with your daughter, who is 14 and has no idea what you do. She thinks you work in data management for the government. You think, this is the thing about this work. It doesn't look like anything from the outside. The enormity of it is invisible. And you've been trained, over 2 decades, to prefer it that way. Level 7. The Deputy Director of Operations. You're 51. You are, in the formal hierarchy of the Central Intelligence Agency, the 3rd most powerful person in the building. The Deputy Director for Operations, the head of the National Clandestine Service, oversees all human intelligence collection and covert action globally. You have operational equities in over 100 countries. You manage the largest network of human intelligence officers any organization in American history has ever fielded. You brief the director daily. You brief the National Security Advisor weekly. You testify before the Senate Intelligence Committee twice a year in closed session, in a room with no windows and an armed guard outside the door. You are responsible for people you will never meet, in places you've never been, doing things that will never be written down in any document that survives beyond its operational lifespan. 3 months into your tenure, an operation in Eastern Europe, a long-running penetration of a foreign intelligence service, begins to show signs of compromise. A source who has been in place for 11 years suddenly changes his communication patterns. Messages become shorter. Meeting intervals stretch. The content grows thin. The assessment from the field, possible surveillance. Your assessment, reviewing the same data, possible controlled contact. The source may be operating under duress, feeding you material a hostile service has approved. The difference matters enormously. If it's surveillance, you pull him out. If it's a controlled contact, pulling him out confirms to the hostile service that you know, and it burns the method of detection. You convene a panel. 5 senior officers with relevant expertise. 4 days of review. The panel is split. You make the call. You leave the source in place for 90 more days under enhanced scrutiny. At day 67, he makes a pre-arranged distress signal. You extract him within 48 hours. He's safe. He tells debriefers that the hostile service had identified him 6 months earlier and had been running him as a double, feeding him fabricated intelligence to pass to you. You think about the 11 years, the cables, the assessments built on his reporting, the decisions those assessments may have influenced. You order a retrospective review of every piece of intelligence he ever provided. It takes 14 months. You don't sleep well during those 14 months. Level 8. The Director of the CIA. You're 57. The President of the United States called you on a Thursday morning. You were in a budget meeting. You stepped out. He offered you the job in 4 sentences. You took 24 hours to answer, or not because you were uncertain. You had understood for years that this is where the arc of your career was pointing, but because you believed the weight of it deserved at least one night of clear reckoning. You are confirmed by the Senate 71 to 29. The building changes when you walk into it now. Not the building itself. The marble, the seals, the stars on the wall haven't moved. But the way the building relates to you has changed entirely. Every room you enter reconfigures itself around your presence. You have a morning brief at 6:45 a.m. that covers threats, ongoing operations, and intelligence gaps across every geographic and functional division of the agency. You then attend the presidential daily brief at the White House. You sit in rooms where the decisions made will not be publicly known for decades, if ever. The work at this level is less about intelligence and almost entirely about power. It's management, it's negotiation, it's careful application in an environment where multiple institutions with overlapping authorities are all trying to influence the same set of outcomes. The DNI, the Director of National Intelligence, your nominal superior, has a different institutional mandate. The Pentagon has its own intelligence apparatus and its own priorities. The FBI has jurisdiction over domestic matters that frequently connect to foreign intelligence threads. These relationships require constant maintenance. 6 months into your tenure, a sensitive collection program is leaked to a journalist. Not the program's existence, its specific operational details. Details that could only have come from someone with very limited access. Someone inside. You order a counterintelligence investigation. The investigation runs for 9 months. It identifies the likely source, a mid-grade analyst in a support division who believed sincerely that the program represented a constitutional overreach. He is arrested on a Tuesday. You are briefed on the arrest by your general counsel. You say nothing for a long moment. You think about the difference between a person who leaks because they want to damage the institution and a person who leaks because they believe the institution has damaged something larger than itself. You decide the distinction, while real, doesn't change your institutional obligation. You authorize the referral to the Department of Justice. You go back to work. Level 9. The former director. You're 62. You left the job on a January afternoon. The way everyone leaves it eventually, either pushed or pulled, in your case the latter, a new administration with different priorities and a desire to install their own person. The transition was professional. You briefed your successor for 2 weeks. You handed over the programs, the relationships, the ongoing operations. You shook hands. You walked out of the building for what you told yourself was the last time as director, though you knew that wasn't entirely true. These institutions don't release people cleanly. The consulting offers come quickly. Think tanks, defense contractors, a university that wants you to run a new center on intelligence studies, a private equity firm that values what it calls your geopolitical risk assessment capabilities. You take the university position. You teach a graduate seminar on intelligence and national security. 12 students, all of them brilliant, idealistic, working on their theses about oversight frameworks and collection authorities and the ethical architecture of covert action. They ask you questions you spent 35 years not being allowed to answer. You answer as many as you're legally able to. One student, a young woman from Minneapolis, first-generation college graduate, scholarship student, the sharpest analytical mind in the room, asks you during the penultimate session, "Do you think it was worth it? All of it?" You sit with the question for longer than you've sat with any question in recent memory. You tell her, "Worth it is the wrong frame. The work was necessary. Whether it was done well, whether I did it well, that's the question I'll spend the rest of my life trying to answer honestly." She writes it down. You wonder if that's the truest thing you've said in years. Level 10. The legacy. You're 71. Your name appears in 3 declassified historical reviews released over the past decade. In 2 of them, your role in specific operations is redacted entirely. In the 3rd, your name appears in a footnote. A footnote that references a targeting authorization, a program later deemed to have produced significant intelligence value, and a separate internal review regarding the handling of a source who did not survive his extraction. The source's name is still classified. You know his name. You think about him more than you think about the intelligence he provided. More than you think about the programs, the budgets, the policy briefings. You think about the specific afternoon in 2009 when you reviewed his file and made the assessment that his reporting was reliable and his security posture was adequate. You think about whether you were right and whether being right was enough. You give a commencement address at a small college in Ohio. They've invited you because you're a figure of accomplished public service. The students are 22. They look the way you looked at 22. Uncertain, ambitious, not yet aware of the specific shape their compromises will take. You tell them, every institution asks something of you. The question worth spending your life on is whether what it asks is equal to what it takes. They applaud. Afterward, a young man in a dark suit approaches you near the parking lot. He introduces himself quietly, mentions a particular office in a particular building in Northern Virginia. He's polished, composed, slightly too still. You recognize the stillness. He says he has a few questions about your time in Nairobi, if you have a moment. You say you have a moment. You walk together, away from the crowd, toward the shade at the edge of the lawn. The institution, it turns out, never entirely lets go. And maybe you never entirely wanted it to.